Recently, I had a video praising the efforts of DC Comics, how they're turning around not just their fortunes, but also really making an impact with retailers. I want to see this stuff get bigger and bigger. Unfortunately, there's one entity that is not with the program, and that is Marvel Comics. They are not turning anything around. If anything, I think everything is getting worse, if I'm going to be completely honest. They have 2 or 3 ongoing books even worth reading. Incredible Hulk, Ultimate Spider-Man, and it's very difficult for me to even think of another one. There's probably one more out there that I could name that's actually ongoing, but it's really slim pickings at Marvel. And recently, Tom Brevoort came out and was talking about the fact that they can constantly reboot. They're always going to number ones and telling people just to get over it, that this is how we do business. And if you want to be a Marvel fan, this is what you're going to have to learn to live with. Thankfully, I'm not the only one that thought, man, that is really insane. That is the worst message I think I've ever seen a comic book executive send out to fans. It's almost as stupid as, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my books. That's kind of the track that Tom Brevoort was taking there. And he's not a nobody. He's a senior executive at Marvel Comics, their senior editor. He is a decision maker there, and to put that message out was stupid. And other people are noticing just how stupid that is. One of them is Rod Lamberti, the owner of Rodman Comics in Iowa. He has a newsletter, normally on Bleeding Cool. I hadn't seen one in quite some time, but he actually put out a 2-for-1. He put out 2 newsletters on the same day, and I really appreciated his perspective on there. Anytime I can highlight a retailer's point of view, I like to do that. In fact, I think I'm going to have a really big retailer come onto the channel and talk to me within the next few weeks. Hopefully we can iron that out, because I can't wait to talk about all this stuff going on. But these are some of the points of view and thoughts of Rod Lamberti regarding Tom Brevoort. And he kind of went into how to attract new readers, what's working, what's not working. I said, you know what, this all really relates to each other. So we're going to hit it all right here. If you would like to read the full articles, I will show you. During the video, you'll see the headline. You can go find it on Bleeding Cool yourself. Everyone agrees that Marvel's constant cancellation and relaunch cycle has become one of the most infuriating things in modern comics. And Tom Brevoort's tone-deaf response to it only poured gasoline on the fire, instead of acknowledging the confusion and fatigue fans feel from trying to follow titles that get rebooted every 12 issues. Brevoort basically shrugged it off, saying most series today won't last anyway. Rod Lamberti of Rodman Comics nailed it when he says, imagine a comic book store owner telling customers, it's a Marvel comic, so it will not last very long. Enjoy it while you can. Imagine a new TV show, and the producer said, enjoy it now. Odds are it will not be more than a season or 2. That would deflate interest, not excite people to watch. Exactly, because people want to buy into stories, especially with comic books, because we're used to a periodic format, that continue on. Why does anybody want to sign on for something that's going to last for 10 issues? Especially with the way that comic books are written today, that's 2 stories, max. And in all likelihood, that might just be 1 story, depending on the writer. And the fact that Brevoort went out there and said that and put owners like Rod Lamberti in such a terrible position to say, yeah, I wish they would go longer, but I have no influence on this. And he's telling you, if you like it, just read it, but don't expect it to go anywhere. Like, what is Rod Lamberti and what are retailers really supposed to do with this statement like this? I remember Dan Buckley promising we're going to get all of our ongoings to 10 issues at a minimum. 10 issues is embarrassing. Every ongoing should make it to like 50 issues at a minimum, especially if you're a prominent character like a Captain America and Iron Man. None of these characters can even sniff 50 issues anymore. They're lucky if they make it to 25. Although the Fantastic Four are going to make it to 35, and guess what they're doing? They're going to reboot it. Immortal Thor, I think, just made it over like 20-something issues. About to reboot it. Everything is in this constant state of reboot and relaunch. At this point, they're rebooting and relaunching so often, they're not even changing the writers anymore. They're not even really changing the story. They're just halting it and throwing a new artist on there and calling it something new because they are addicted to the #1 sales boost. But I guess they don't really love the number 15 sales decline on the 3rd reboot. So now they just reboot them faster and faster and faster. And we're in this, I call it a cancellation crisis, especially at Marvel Comics these days. And it's really putting people like Rod Lamberti in a terrible position to where, what are they supposed to do? It's hard to get a customer to sign on to a title. And it's even harder to convince that customer to sign on for the title again every 10 months. It doesn't even make sense what their business strategy is. We call it managed decline at this point, but it almost feels like they've lost control of all of it, and it's not even really managed anymore. It's just decline. Lamberti goes a step further by saying what a lot of fans are already thinking. It feels like Marvel has simply given up on telling stories worth sticking with. Instead of building runs that matter, they're pumping out filler arcs and variant covers to hit sales quotas. He puts it bluntly, where is the effort? Where are the ideas? Where is the future for Marvel? Where is the beef? It's not just long-term readers who notice. Even new readers who walk into a comic book shop are often more interested in older issues because those comics actually had something to say. They had weight. They were building something. That tells you everything. People don't want to buy into a story when there's no reason to believe it'll even finish. And at this point, why would you trust Marvel to finish anything? When's the last time they extended anything out? You know, DC is doing much better. They're not doing as great as I think they could be doing, but they extended out Poison Ivy from a maxi series into an ongoing. They just extended Absolute Martian Manhunter from a 6-issue miniseries to a 12-issue maxi series, and I imagine if the sales stick around, they'll make that an ongoing. DC is doing the exact opposite. They're making things go out further. What is Nightwing on, like 130 or something like that? I think Batman's up to essentially issue 160 these days. For some reason, DC Comics, despite having a much smaller market share than Marvel Comics, is able to keep series going for years, even decades at this point, but Marvel can't even keep a series going for a year total. It's the weirdest thing. It's because they don't really have any ideas. They don't have any great stories. What's the last great Marvel comic story? I would say House of X Powers of 10. Before that, I think you would probably have to go to like Gore the God Butcher. You know, there was some decent stuff in there. You know, I like Venom. There's some good runs. But those great stories, I don't think King in Black was a great story. I don't think Absolute Carnage was a great story. I think that's a good Venom run. But Gore the God Butcher, great story. House of X Powers of 10, great story. They're not producing anything like that. And unfortunately, this is what you get, this truncated, shrunk down reset cycle where you have people like Rod Lamberti throwing their fucking hands up going, what are you guys doing? Do you have ideas? Do you even have a strategy, a point to your publishing line at this point? Or are you just literally throwing everything at the wall and realizing nothing sticks? Because that's really what's going on. And the problem with the Rod Lamberti is you do have an older generation, an older audience that's normally in your local comic book shops. They need to find new readers. They need to find a younger audience. DC appears to be doing that. Marvel, nowhere to be found. And he kind of talked about some of those issues with finding that new audience and getting new eyes on comic books. And here's the kicker. Marvel's insane popularity outside of comics isn't doing a damn thing to bring in new comic book readers. The movies might dominate at the box office, but they don't move the needle in the shop. Lamberti points out that even with all the hype and marketing around Captain America Brave New World, the Sam Wilson Captain America comics just sat there. Nobody cared. That kind of disconnect should be a red flag for everyone at Marvel. You have millions of eyeballs on your characters every year, and somehow you can't convince a fraction of them to buy a book? That's not a success story. It's a failure of the publishing side to capitalize on cultural momentum, and unfortunately at this point, it feels like they never capitalized on it. I think it's kind of all done. I don't think the MCU and Marvel Studios is going to be the world leader just as far as box office revenue for the next decade. I think that was the last decade. I think that moment might just be over at this point. And they never really found that new audience despite hundreds of millions of people knowing who the heroes were and wearing the shirts and the backpacks and everything else, getting the action figures and stuff. They never figured out how to sell them the actual comic books. You had Iron Man, you know, Tony Stark, Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr., the most popular superhero in the world in the MCU. They killed the character off. You had Steve Rogers, Captain America, you know, in the MCU to begin with. What happens? They remove him and his Falcon cap at that point. When they released the second Doctor Strange movie, they killed him off right before that. Every time they had a chance to do something and really gain some notoriety or get a foothold or find that new generation of readers, they shot themselves in the foot trying to be culturally relevant. And while they certainly were able to generate headlines and get publicity about all of these changes and just how diverse this new generation of Marvel heroes were, it never translated really into anybody coming in the shop and wanting to get to know them. In fact, it translated into, an entire decade of nothingness. There's not a story to mine in there that can be mined to actually make the MCU and rejuvenate it, because they've just wasted all these efforts. Think about all the resources wasted on trying to make Falcon Cap a thing. It didn't start out in movies. It didn't start on Disney Plus. It started out in the comic books. Even when they had a good writer on it, Rick Remender, it didn't work. Nobody bought it. And then it just got progressively worse and worse. They kept rebooting it more and more and more, and nobody cared and cared and cared still. And they thought, well, yeah, let's just put that into a movie. So now you've had Marvel Comics and their brain trust essentially destroy the MCU. The thing that should have been driving people into the comic book shops, their ideas drove them out of the theaters. That's how bad Marvel Comics has it. And that's how hard people like a Rod Lamberti have to work just to get new eyes on product. The good news is that Lamberti hasn't thrown in the towel yet. In fact, he's actively working on ways to bring new readers into comic books. One of the simplest, most effective strategies he mentions is offering discounts on first issues and creating theme displays that help new customers navigate the overwhelming number of titles. He also emphasizes the value of talking to customers, something the industry seems to have forgotten, saying, we talk to people, we find out what they like, we make suggestions. It's retail 101, but in comics, that kind of personal engagement can go a long way. He believes there's still a future for comics, but only if publishers stop treating readers like short-term numbers on a spreadsheet and start treating them like long-term fans. The stories have to matter. The characters have to matter. And the people making the books have to respect the fact that readers, new and old, want something worth showing up for. And quite frankly, Marvel is not doing that. You are not a tabulation in the spreadsheet. You are not just a number. You are a human being, and you, as a comic book fan, deserve better from Marvel Comics. Everybody deserves better from Marvel Comics. The characters deserve better from Marvel Comics. The creators that created the characters deserve better stewardship over the things that they've made over the past, 60, 80 years. And it feels like they just don't care, making it so much harder for retailers that are struggling with narrow profit margins, a lot of times operating in like mini malls and stuff like that. Rent is going up, but the popularity of comic books isn't going up with it. It was going down, it seemed like, for a long time. Maybe DC is going to turn it around. There are at least some very good signs that people are discovering comic books once again. But Marvel is not keeping up their end of the bargain. Marvel is embarrassing themselves, and they are the market leader. If they canceled 40 of those terrible comic books that no one gives a damn about, put all the effort into the other 40 that they have left, maybe release another 10 with real good ideas behind them, and said, hey, this stuff matters. We're going to keep it around for longer than a month. People might start caring again. But it's going to be a hard sell, especially with Marvel Comics, because it's been so long since they gave a crap about any of this stuff. I don't think they see us as customers or fans. I think they see us as Marvel marks. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if we're interested or entertained. We will show up no matter what. And at this point, they're trying to sell you the exact same comic book 8 different times with 8 different covers without ever actually delivering a story worth buying 8 times. They just don't do it anymore. And I feel bad for people like Rod Lamberti and Rodman Comics, but I love these guys because they're putting in all the hard work. They're doing all the legwork, despite all the efforts of Marvel to basically destroy the direct market. And thank God for people like that. Or maybe we wouldn't even be here anymore. Maybe we wouldn't even be talking about DC and Marvel at this point. They screwed so much stuff up over the past decade. But I think awesome guys like Rod Lamberti out there putting in the work has probably prolonged the life and given comic books another chance to reinvigorate and reinvent itself and maybe bring people back. DC's doing that. Marvel's not. Marvel's an embarrassment. And Tom Brevoort telling people, yeah, they're only going to be 10 issues. Suck it up, Buttercup. That's all you get. Was one of the most tone-deaf, stupid things I've heard in a very, very long time. And I definitely do recommend all of you find that article. I appreciate hearing from retailers and amplifying that kind of information because I think it's so important to know what these guys are going through right now. If you appreciate this kind of honesty and this kind of analysis right here on Think Critical YouTube, there's one place to support the channel, keep that mission moving forward, keep the videos coming. It's Think Critical Patreon, link in the video description. Button right here. Hope to see you there very soon. We got lots of extra podcasts, and we're definitely counting on you guys to help us keep this mission moving forward for the long haul.